Howdy, Larkin Rose here, and thanks to Tom Smith, I'm doing 2 more piano lessons because he donated a bit, so I'd do a couple more. So I'm doing a couple more. So, even though it's been a while since I did them, you can always replay the last one, so I'm not going to do a huge rehash of everything I covered before. We've covered major and minor chords, and getting used to seeing them up and down the whole keyboard. So, now I want to start getting into the fun stuff, which is writing your own stuff. This is also going to overlap with figuring out other people's songs. But now I'm going to start to get into writing your own stuff, which is something that hardly anybody ever teaches for some reason. And I find that kind of obnoxious. Now, of course, you can literally write your own stuff by sitting in front of a piano and hitting things until you find stuff that sounds good, but trial and error may involve mostly error, and it may kind of take forever to find anything that isn't just horrendous. But again, the rules that I'm teaching aren't about you're only allowed to do this. Like, the whole point is do stuff that sounds cool to you. And if what sounds cool to you breaks some of the rules, cool. And I write stuff and it almost always breaks a few of the rules, I'm telling you right now. The point of the rules is just to make it easier to quickly find stuff that's likely to sound good. But it isn't like there's some, if you break the rules, you're in trouble. The point is to make stuff that sounds cool. If your ears like it, good job. Now, there's 2 main ways to write music. One is, I will refer to it as hearing it and then figuring it out. And the other one is stumbling over it. What I mean by stumbling over it is you go up to a keyboard, and you do it on a guitar or whatever, but you go up to keyboard and you just hit stuff and see what it sounds like. You don't have the idea already in your head. You're not hearing the sound in your head and then figuring it out. You're just sort of going, let's see, and like, again, it's trial and error. But one is you just play around until you hear something cool and then you remember it. The other one is you actually hear it in your head or you hum it out loud and then you find it on the keyboard. Now, often that comes in the form of something I refer to as channeling. And I'm not the only one who describes it that way. A lot of musicians describe it that way, where their favorite stuff that they wrote, they don't really know where it came from. It's not like figuring out a math equation. It's like, well, suddenly I heard that it was supposed to do this, and it's kind of like channeling it from somewhere else. And I don't know, it's just freaking magic. But either way, that falls into the category of you hear it first in your head, and then you find out how to play it on the keyboard. So, whichever one of those you want to use, I'm going to start an exercise here. We're going to do a 4 chord pattern that repeats. Now, you can find your own. I'm going to use one to use as an example here. Now that you know how to find major and minor chords, you can find stuff and see what you think sounds cool together. Now, you don't even have to go by the rules. You can literally just pick random sets of notes and see if they sound good together. The thing is, most random sets of notes are going to sound kind of ugly. And again, that's the reason for the rules, is have a way to find something like if you do the skip 2, skip 3. All right, that sounds like an actual chord. That's sort of a starting point. Maybe you'll find something else. Okay, that's a different chord. And so you can all the way, and I remember when I was really little and didn't know any of this, but I was already playing the piano, I wrote a bunch of stuff having no idea what any of the notes were called, what any chords were called, how any of that even worked. I would just plink around until I found something I thought was cool and then remember it. So you can totally do that. That's still music. That's still perfectly legitimate. It's just slow and awkward because there's so many things you could play that just sound horrible. And if you don't have a half-decent guess of what to try next, it'll be lots of ugly noise and occasionally something cool. So, I'm going to do a 4-chord pattern here, but I suggest you also do your own. Sit down. Now that you know how to do major and minor chords, you can either say, well, I'm going to try a G minor and count it out and find it, or you can literally close your eyes and just go, okay, what was that? And then figure it out. But I'm going to do this chord pattern. You can find your own. And show a way for you to write your first little thing. And, it doesn't have to be a massive symphony. It's just getting your brain in the mode of learning to write stuff. So I'm going to do a chord pattern. It's actually a chord pattern I used in a song that I wrote probably close to 40 years ago. I was a teenager. And I still remember it. Going to do the second version because I'll keep it simple. So we're just going to do 4 chords. The 4 chords, in case you care, are D minor, F major, G major, B flat major. Remember, the thing is, if I don't say if it's major or minor, that means it's major. That's the default. Okay, so now I'm just going to play, for the next few seconds, I'm going to play the chords, just the notes that are in the chords, nothing else weird, just the chords and their inversions. So D minor, F, G, B flat, D minor, F, G, B flat. Okay, now, it helps to have some way to record yourself playing. It can even just be a stupid little phone recording yourself playing, because that's easier than multitasking for the next thing I'm going to say, which is find a pattern. You can cheat and use the one I just gave you, or find your own and play around until you find a pattern. Run through the pattern and try the thing of channeling, where you just listen and see if you hear something that goes along with it. Now, it's kind of a weird thing to try to describe because I don't know what you're listening for. Like, you're literally listening to something that isn't there to see if you find some cool thing that happens to go with it. And the best way to do that is, like, if you record a chord pattern and you play it over and over again, like put it on a loop, playing over and over again, and see if you just hear some melody. And it can just be like you're humming along or something. Maybe you hum it and hear it, or you hear it and then figure it out. And if for some reason that just isn't working for you or whatever, you can play the pattern of chords that's going over and over again, and then on the keyboard just sort of plink around and hit stuff and go, oh, no, that's horrible, that's horrible. Oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of cool, until you find things that go with it. Was just me making up stuff. If you visualize the notes in the chord, like here's a D minor, and you can always use the notes in the chord. Whoops, I missed. But also the second and the fourth that we talked about before. So here's the root note, the third, in this case it's a minor third, and the fifth. There's the chord, and then it has its inversions going up and down the whole keyboard. You can always play those notes, but the second and the fourth are often in melodies. You can also do the sixth and the seventh. That's a little bit rarer, but it depends how cool and intricate the music is. But in this case, because of the chord pattern I used, except for the B flat that comes at the end, mostly play around on the white notes because that's mostly what's going to fit in this chord pattern. Now, one thing I will say is there's a weird phenomenon. First of all, music is just magic. The fact that we even like to hear the ratios and the patterns is just weird. Like, it's a weird human magic spiritual thing. I don't even know why we like to hear the difference in vibrations at all, but we do. So whatever, it's cool. Have fun with it. But when it comes to music, there needs to be a certain amount of regularity and predictability for our ears to like it. So a chord, I'll do F major. The frequencies between, the ratios between those different frequencies are mathematically a certain way, which I'm not going to get into explaining right now, that our ears like to hear that. Oh, those sound pleasant together. Whereas if you do a bunch of things where the ratios are just random, your ear goes, stop that. So there's a certain amount of predictability and reliability that your ear wants to hear. However, if that's all it is, your ear will quickly get bored. It's actually your brain getting bored, obviously, but your brain gets bored because it's like, okay, I've heard this a million times. Do something else. So music is this weird combination of doing enough of the predictable and expected to be comfortable, but enough of the unpredictable and unexpected to be interesting. And so when you're writing a melody to go with some chords, try not to do the most predictable, obvious thing. Steady, boring beat on the beat every single time gets very boring quickly. I will give a demonstration of boring. Notice the order of them was still weird enough. It was jumping around a little bit. That part was, could be kind of cool, but the timing got boring because it's just on every chord or note. So there's a few different ways to intentionally make things weird enough to keep them interesting. One is don't have the notes just sitting right next to each other the whole time. Dare to jump. But the other one is timing. So it's the intervals where the notes actually are, and then the timing can be weird stuff. In fact, you can have something that the actual notes used are really simple and boring, but the timing makes it cool. Maybe not cool enough, but cool. So be trying to keep the stuff you make up, again, predictable enough that it isn't just weird and makes your head explode, but unpredictable enough in notes and where it's going and the timing and the syncopation, like it doesn't have to start on the downbeat. Now, I have to get into this a little bit because it's basic to music. The vast majority of songs you hear are going to be in 4-beat. What that means is a repeating pattern every 4 beats. Literally turn on a radio and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Every rock song in the whole freaking world is 1, 2, 3, 4. Not quite everyone. Every once in a while they're in 3. I actually like writing in 3. I write in 3 more often than most people do because I'm weird. But a lot of things are in 4-beat. But if you picture it, and you can listen to a song and not even have noticed what the timing is going through the song, but it's almost always in 4-beat. Now, when you're writing a melody, if you're just doing it on the beat, it gets boring and weird. If you do it rushed ahead of the beat or afterwards, or you speed up and then you slow down, or you do weird syncopated stuff, it's way more interesting. In fact, I'm going to make this up as I go along. I'm going to do a boring pattern on the beats and then almost the same notes, but just weirding up the pattern. That was on the beat. Notice it was the same notes. It was just, it had more feel and flow and weirdness to it because I didn't just do them all on the stinking beat. So when you're writing a melody, if you have a chord pattern to play over and over again, whether you're just playing around by plinking or hearing it in your head and then figuring it out, try to do weirder syncopated stuff and stuff that doesn't hit where your brain expects it to. And that's just a thing that takes getting used to. You have to just do it. So I'm going to actually do a little piece that you can record and play on a loop so you can play around to it in case you don't want to find your own chord pattern and stuff. I'm just going to play the pattern I said. It's D minor, F major, G major, B flat major. I'm just going to go through it like 4 times so you can literally take a clip out of this, like record it with your phone if you have to play it in circles, to then play around on your own keyboard or piano or whatever to see if you can find something cool that goes along with it. So now I'm going to shut up and just play 4 cycles of this, which you can then play on a loop. So there. Now, if you can stick that on a loop, and you don't even have to have the keyboard to begin with. You can just be playing it and hum in your head. In fact, you can do it entirely that way. If you have a way to play it and record what you're humming, I mean, you might need 2 phones or something. Just let the cycle play and hum along and see if you find weird things that go along with it. When it comes to music, it's sort of like drawing or painting or, a bunch of kinds of art, where it's just, I don't know where it comes from. It just sort of, I wanted it to do this. So just make it do what you want. The easier way, if you're not used to doing that, is just to plunk around on a keyboard and see if you find things that happen to fit. And you'll find lots of things that don't fit at all. But you'll find some things that fit, and just remember those things and put them together into an actual song. Now, that's probably almost enough for this particular video. But I do quick want to mention something that maybe I'll get into in the next video, which is when it comes to harmonies. Because it isn't just, a lot of songs these days kind of are just some chords and a melody on top of it. But music doesn't have to be just that, because that's kind of boring. There can be a gazillion different instruments playing a zillion different parts. So if you picture a chord like this, you can either play it all on a piano, or you can picture, a bass guitar is doing this, and an acoustic guitar is doing that, and a flute's doing that, and strings are doing these notes. All those notes added together will still make the same really cool chord, even coming from a bunch of different instruments playing different pieces of that. And so when you hear an orchestra play, you hear the big chords. None of the instruments are playing chords. They're all playing one note at a time. Like first violin, second violin, violas, cellos, French horn, trombones. They spread it out and they're each doing their own part, but together they make the exact chords that we've been talking about. Majors and minors, and then sevenths and weird stuff thrown in. But that's just a bunch of different instruments, each playing a different note, and they add up to the chord, which, if you're going to play a song by yourself, you kind of need an instrument like a guitar or a keyboard that can actually play a whole bunch of notes at once. You can't play a chord on a flute or a violin. It doesn't work. Well, there are some cases in which you can play a couple notes at the same time on a violin if you're hitting the same strings, but you still can't play a whole chord. So anyway, I want your brain to start heading in the direction of realizing it isn't just a matter of, well, there's going to be a chord played by one thing and then a tune on top of it. I mean, you can do that. A lot of songs are that. Somebody strumming a guitar and singing the melody. And that's all it is. And that can be pretty cool. But there's a million billion ways it can go. And I think in the next video, I'm going to start getting into harmonies, which is, and it doesn't have to be a harmony with another singing voice, although it can be. It could be, well, the melody, the sung melody, the voice does this thing, but then there's a guitar doing this other thing in a different place, and how to find things that actually fit together. Because you can find a chord pattern and find one melody that's really cool and another different melody that's really cool. And if you play them together, they sound absolutely horrendous. Or you can find parts that each sound cool and together sound even cooler. But I'll sort of get into that in the next video to explain how to find different parts that actually fit together. Because unfortunately, it doesn't work that, well, if this part is cool and that part's cool, they're going to be cool together. No, often they'll be crap together. But there are, again, rules about how to make different parts that actually fit together and sound cool together, whether it's a whole stinking orchestra or a three-piece band or, two people singing, whatever. Anyway, so I guess that's enough for this babbly lesson. And so go write stuff. And you can use that dumb little chord pattern I did, or you can go make up your own chord pattern, record that in a loop, and then either play around plinking on a keyboard to find something to go with it, or just hum in your head and then figure out how to play that on a keyboard. But do record it. I'll end on this. If you write a cool thing and like, oh, that's really memorable, and I kind of like that, and then you go away for a half hour and come back, you may very well find that it's completely gone. You're like, oh, what? How does it go? So do record it. If you find something you like, record it. I still do that even on my stupid little flip phone, is I'll record it, because it may have been totally catchy, but you only played it a few times and then your brain just loses it. So if you find something cool, record it. And if you can, videotape yourself playing it so you not only remember what it sounds like, but you remember how to play it so you don't have to start over every time. So, all right, so that's it for this lesson. Yeehaw.